empowering the blind to be excellent, do more, and live with greater success. This show is for you and about you. Welcome to the Delivering Access Podcast.
Are you ready to empower?
I certainly am.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, you are our featured guest here on the Delivering Access Podcast. Take a moment. We want to get to know you and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I guess I'm a bit of an old guy because I was born in 1952. I was premature, the old retinopathy of prematurity, so I went to the provincial school for the blind here in Ontario, but luckily I got to live at home because it was in the same town where I was born. So although I went to a school for the blind, I was pretty well integrated because when I got toward high school, I was playing a lot of music and had a lot of sighted friend musicians outside the school. Then I went to university for a couple of years, but wasn't really ready and ended up quitting that and going up north to play in a rock and roll band with some friends from school. And then I got into the audio production course, and then I felt like the music industry was kind of a cutthroat thing back then in the late 70s. I got involved in the self-help movement for blind people here in Ontario with a rather leftist organization that was very good at advocacy, and my role in that was to become fascinated with all the access technology. So we did a report called Applications of Technology and Employment of Blind and Visually Impaired People. And as a result of that, I ended up getting a job at Mitel Corporation in Ottawa, which was a telephone PBX manufacturer. And there's an interesting parallel because during all these other years, I was fascinated with the phone. I was one of these guys who could whistle into it and make it do things that the phone company didn't like me doing. But the funny thing was, whereas Bell Canada was chasing me, Mitel was the new upstart company, and it decided that hiring the phone freak made sense because, well, if I couldn't crash it, then it was probably ready to go to market, and that seemed to work very well. And as a result of getting that job, I got my first bunch of adaptive technology equipment. Wow, it was a VersaBraille that weighed about 10 or 12 pounds, and it could hold 1 whole kilobyte of memory at a time, and, you know, like really progressive equipment, right?
I remember.
So that was it. And during that job for the 2 years, what started to happen was, well, I was kind of famous because no blind person in Canada had had a job quite like this at that stage of the technological development. And it ended up that I was getting more phone calls from blind people around Canada saying, can you help me hook this thing up? And I have a VersaBraille and I need to do X and Y. So Mitel was paying me to do work, but I was actually spending more and more time consulting. And everybody said to me, you know, you should quit that and just go into the access technology consulting because that way you won't have gotten fired from Mitel for not doing what they're actually paying you for. So I took the advice. And the rest of that has just gone on. I've been involved with adaptive technology. I fiddled with music. Then at age 50, believe it or not, I finally figured, well, knowing how to use a computer used to be a special thing, and if you knew anything about it, they loved you, but now everybody knows how to use a computer, so I'd better go and get a piece of paper that says I can do something. So I went back to school and managed actually to graduate with honors from Canada's rehabilitation teaching program. And then I got this full-time job where I work at the agency where I work right now. I got that in '05. And starting in '09, when the iPhone first became accessible to us, I was totally fascinated with it and really drummed up a huge clientele of students who really wanted to learn it. So the rehabilitation teacher more or less turned into the eye habilitation teacher. I said that as a joke to somebody one day, and they said, "That's what you are. You're an eye habilitation teacher." Gotten a dog yet, so I was just, poked around with a cane and found my way here and there. It wasn't really that much of a struggle, really. It was fun.
Okay. Well, it sounds like it was a period in your life that you went out, you enjoyed yourself, you came back home, you found some new things to get into as a blind person. Let's kind of change tempo a little bit and move into what your desires are for the blind community.
I think I don't know if I have a specific desire for the blind community, because I've been thinking a lot about this sort of thing lately, and just for the disabled community in general, it has to do with just, I wish more blind people had positions of power in the agencies that look after us, because so much of the stuff around fundraising ends up portraying us in ways that we ought not to be portrayed a lot of the time. And, speaking personally as a vision impaired person, I find that about 5% of my problems in life have to do with my actual visual impairment, and about 95% of my problems have to do with other people's reactions, because they simply don't know any better. I think we just need to accelerate our integration in society and general awareness about disability. So the more that can happen, and it's happening a lot more now that it has. I mean, the whole thing about accessibility and inclusive design and everything else, I think it's starting to improve an awful lot. But my ultimate desire would be that we would never have to talk about accessibility anymore, because accessibility would just be the universal default, and it wouldn't bear discussion, because it would just be the way things were done, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could definitely relate to that. I'm on the hunt for some new washers and dryers, and everything that I'm looking at is this touchscreen display. And yeah, they have an iPhone app, which is great and evolutionary, and the app isn't accessible, the washer and dryer isn't accessible, but yet they want our money. So, I can definitely agree with you on that.
Now, didn't an article go past me a few months ago where it was something to do with Apple licensing the technology? So eventually we're actually going to see something like VoiceOver, originally licensed by Apple, but starting to appear in a lot of appliances. I thought I read something about that a while back.
Man, there's articles flying all over the internet about accessibility and VoiceOver and the different screen reading technology. And I know it's coming. It's like you said, even in the technology realm, just a matter of educating. I mean, how many times have you went into meetings and you're the only blind person there, and you're like the spectacle, and can we help you, poor guy type ordeal? And it's just really a matter of us getting out and us really educating and showing us what we need. It's almost like babies, being able to show them this is something that I could do, with the proper teaching or the proper access. It'll be a no-brainer for us. So, definitely can relate to that. Now that we're on technology, tell us a little bit about the technology that you're currently using now and how it's exciting you.
Well, the technology I use in my day job to get the work done doesn't excite me very much at all, because it's just Windows and it's Microsoft, whatever we have to do the client records. The technology that excites me is the whole, especially the iPhones and the touch screens and all the apps that are becoming available, because I just see my students all the time figure out how to do more and more things. And it's really encouraging me in that I've developed the books to go with the iPhone, because when I first started out with the iPhone, I knew it was revolutionary, but, and as you folks have talked about, and Bree has talked about a lot, my first few weeks with an iDevice, it came very close to being crushed under my heel a couple of times. And then I got thinking about, well, what is it that's frustrating me about this. And I suddenly realized that I was flicking all over the screen, and that's why it was taking so long to find things. And a couple of people I know just started saying, well, drag your finger around and, because that thing's right beside it. You only have to move your finger up. You don't have to flick 5 times to go back to the beginning of the row and up to the row above. And I started putting that together because luckily in school, for me, we had teachers who did really, really good maps of all kinds of things. I was a geography maniac. I couldn't get my hands on enough maps to feel how things were. And it occurred to me that if there were feelable diagrams that people could feel with one hand while they move their finger around the phone with the other, the phone would do the talking, and they would be able to read the abbreviations. Like in the book, it says ME for messages, CL for calendar, because, you can only fit a couple of letters inside the little squares that represent the icons. But you can feel around that phone with one hand and feel around the book with the other. And I did a few of those diagrams. There's a company called Tactile Vision that produces my books for me. Well, we kind of do it together, I guess. And we made a few diagrams, and I tried them with people. And the aha moments that happened when people started getting these images in their heads, they would switch from being okay users to just going like lightning with the phone, and it's because they had an image in their head of what the screen was like. So what we're developing is what I call ear-hand coordination. We can't have eye-hand coordination, but you can have ear-hand coordination, and the muscle memory in your hands cultivates to the point where once you start doing this enough, you become much faster because you start knowing. I mean, people say to me now, how do you know to put your finger right there if you can't see? And it's like, I've practiced. I felt my diagrams. I literally give my students exercises. What icon is to the right of the icon you're on now? What icon is above the icon you're on right now? What icon? And I make them practice to the left, right, up and down, moving their fingers with all the icons on their screen. And then the same thing with elements and controls inside of apps. I mean, none of my students understood that in the contact form on the iPhone, there's a little picture up at the top left, and to the right of that picture is 3 things vertically: first name, last name, and company. And I love it when I do this with people. Oh, that's what it looks like. And it's so neat to see blind people talking about what things look like, because the visual cortex of their brain is being stimulated to increase their proficiency.
Okay, so basically these books are tactile books that have the tactical images as well as the braille, and it's a diagram of the iOS device's screen?
Yeah, actually the books are designed so that when the book is open in front of you, on the left-hand side is a large print diagram for low vision people, and on the right-hand side is a tactile diagram with all sorts of neat little lines and squares and little braille labels for the no vision people. So the books are all designed to serve both communities.
Wow. So not only do you use the technology, you create the instructional material for other people to be able to use it and teach how to use iOS devices through tactile learning and braille. What other technology is exciting you right now for the future of the blind?
Believe it or not, I really just think about iPhones and iDevices because this isn't a technology in itself. There's so many other technologies that get incorporated via this environment. I mean, there's GPSs, there's OCR, there's, I don't know, you can listen to your radio from anywhere in the world. I mean, the list of things you can do with iOS technology, with a little device in your hand, is just pretty endless. And, you know, I can't really say that I'm an expert in other technologies. I don't really know anything about Android. I probably held an Android device in my hand probably for 2 minutes in my whole life, and I don't think it was the most recent version. But, when I hear that Android technology has really caught up in terms of accessibility to Apple, I'll be the first guy out there to get one of those and see how it goes, because I think the whole touchscreen technology thing for us, it's the same. It has the same impact as, I don't know, the invention of Braille had for us, or the invention of electronic Braille display, except that this technology is exponentially bigger because it provides access to so much more stuff.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that. Let me ask you this. We spoke earlier in the interview about some changes that we need to make as blind individuals and as a society, kind of understanding our needs and our goals and objectives. What are you doing right now to kind of invoke that change and help that process move along a bit smoother and faster?
Well, I guess I'm just teaching people how to use their devices and making sure that they're involved in speaking to the apps, speaking to accessibility at apple.com when they notice something wrong. I'm teaching people that now they can advocate for their accessibility because they have a company that really listens, and more and more developers out there all the time are turning on to the idea that they can make their apps accessible. I would actually like to see Apple move in a direction of a stricter reinforcement of accessibility, and even putting an accessibility classification into the iStore, the App Store, so that it would be a way of encouraging people to really make sure that their apps are accessible. And once I think the vast majority of developers out there, once they realize or understand that this can be done, I think they're more than willing to do it. Now, you got to realize that there are some kinds of video games. I mean, there are all kinds of apps for the iPhone that can never be accessible to somebody who can't see. But wherever it's possible, I think that people are generally really into the idea. I think an interesting thing that happened this week to talk about change is that what I've been reading about the WIPO treaty victory is they're saying in these articles that even a lot of the people from the publishing companies arrived in Marrakesh all ready to fight this and not let it happen, and that there was a huge change of attitude, even among the publishers, when they got to understand how important this was and just how much of a community was behind it and why they were behind it, that it even caused a lot of change there. So I think just us using this technology and showing it to people and showing how we use it and just getting it in people's faces all the time. I mean, I'm constantly blowing people away. Even on the subway, I'm doing something with my iPhone, and people would just say, "How can you do that?" And sometimes it's not like people annoying you, like you're walking down the street and they say, "How can you find your way?" And you feel like saying, "Because I'm not a stupid idiot, that's how." This is very different. And, they have the right to ask because they've never seen it before. And it's very important to say to them, this is how this works and this is what it is. And if you know any iOS developers, you should tell them about it. And invariably people say, I do know somebody who does iOS development. I'm going to tell them I saw you, Yep. And this happening everywhere all the time does as much, it does at least as much as any kind of political movement. I mean, grassroots awareness is in itself a political movement, so...
Absolutely, absolutely. So you spoke a little bit about iHabilitation as how you came across getting the title. Can you talk a little bit more about iHabilitation and what do you do there and how it all works?
Well, right now I work for an agency called Balance for Blind Adults here in Toronto, and our executive director just said to me, some of the bigger agencies, you have trouble making this stuff happen, but we're a very small agency. There's only 10 of us that work there. Mm-hmm. And she just said to me, if this is the new technology and you can get clients interested in it, you go, you do it. That's it. Go do it. Make it happen. So, yes, I work for Balance, but we can only serve in the Toronto area. And I got thinking, if I'm going to do this kind of work for my career, I really want to find a way to reach out to a much, much, much wider audience.
Okay.
So the first thing I thought about was blind people do tons and tons of podcasts to help each other. The peer support podcast resources in the blind community now are amazing. What I haven't seen a lot of is podcasts with video. Because the minute you have podcasts or productions with video, you're showing the parents, you're showing the teachers, you're showing the caregivers, you're showing their friends, you're showing everybody connected with those people. Those people, listen to me, those people. So you're showing everybody connected with the blind person how this can be done. And at work, they said, well, couldn't you do classes over Skype with the iPhone? And initially, I suppose you couldn't because the person might not understand how to hold the phone or how to do the gestures. I mean, a blind person who's never seen gestures, you can describe a lot of these gestures, but it's going to be difficult to do them without some kind of hand over hand, whatever, doing it on the palm of their hand. Or sometimes when I'm really working with my students, I stand behind them and I draw a little square on their shoulder and I say, okay, this is the iPhone screen. Whatever you feel me do on your shoulder, you do on your screen. And it actually works. You can't do hand over hand on the phone because what happens if too many fingers touch the phone? So I invented hand over shoulder.
Okay.
And it does work. I mean, I can show somebody an app pretty quickly, a student that's used to me and the way we work. Once we've done this, it actually works quite well. But,
yeah, I was just going to say, so eye-hand coordination is out, but you have ear-hand coordination, and now you have...
hand over shoulder.
Hand over shoulder. Awesome. Awesome,
I mean, but people thought I was crazy, you know, and I said, you try this, you see how this works. Wow, this is cool. And they go very quickly.
Yeah, that is wonderful. So, as a blind person, you say you've been around for a while. You're not the youngest guy on the block. Tell us more about a struggle that you've had personally and how you overcame it.
I guess my biggest struggle was actually going back to school at age 50 because I had sort of just done my own thing. And, you know, this was an 8-month super intensive rehabilitation teaching program. I think we took 16 courses in 2 semesters or something ridiculous. I mean, everybody who was in that course had a degree or an undergraduate college diploma or some sort of thing because it was actually a postgraduate program. And most people in there were going, university was never like this. And there were days where I really wondered if I was going to make it. And I don't know how I did it, but I just kept putting one foot in front of the other and ended up being an honors graduate of the thing. But I can tell you that it was not... Going back to school later on is... a little bit difficult. You know, they were all younger. I was the weird old guy in the class, and I don't feel like a weird old guy. I mean, people talk about retirement, and I get frightened by the idea of retirement because I couldn't stand the idea of not being busy. I mean, that's why I really want this eye-habilitation thing to go, because I think there are all... these 2 books that we've done so far... Just the iPhone book and the iPad book. They're just examples. I mean, they're just the 2 books that show people what could be done. I mean, you know, you guys at Fedora are doing a lot of neat stuff. I can't wait to see what course stuff we can develop for you. And, you know, there are some other places that are starting to talk to me now about doing some stuff. So if we can work with Tactile Vision to produce more books, and I can find somebody to help me do more videos, and we can have videos that go with books, and it would have to do with all sorts of apps and programs and devices related to independent living, because if we can get these videos out there, then, like I said before, anybody connected with blind people can look at these videos. Some blind person somewhere can get an iPhone, and they can know that they can log on to the iHabilitation site and hopefully eventually see a whole catalog of videos where they can see how people hold the phone, how they do the gestures, how they use the book to explore the phone. And that way, it won't matter where you are, you will still be able to get this iHabilitation process via remote access through the videos.
Absolutely. And it's funny you should mention that. We're not going to tell anybody. This is going to be between just you and I. But we're actually creating here at Fedora a online university, if you will, where it encompasses the videos, the webinars, and different lectures that we'll be putting on. And it's a product that we're going to roll out when iOS 7 is released. So I think that your ideas will bode very well with what we're trying to do. So we'll, as we've discussed, definitely connect. The books are wonderful. So it's something we can definitely work on in the very near future. So we talked about a struggle. That was you going back to school at a late age. What do you do for leisure and fun?
I have a guitar and a piano and an African thumb piano and some multi-track recording equipment. I fiddle around with that. I spend a lot of time with my doggie in the park. I walk a lot. Maybe I'm kind of boring. I'm kind of a nerd. When I'm not, I only walk away from my technology when I say, I should really go play some music for a while, or I should really go for a walk for a while. And I don't do a lot of extracurricular stuff that much.
Yeah.
I read a lot too, so.
Okay, yeah, and I got that from a lot of the interview, especially working in the early days with the phone company and being that geek, and then most people who play instruments are geeks, and of course being an educator yourself, that only fits that you read and kind of go through that whole thing. All right, Tom. So this was absolutely positively a great interview. Need you to tell us how we can reach out to you, give us one parting piece of advice, and then we'll say goodbye.
The website is www.ihabilitation.ca. Now that's rehabilitation, except you take away the RE and put an I as in iPhone. So that's www.ihabilitation.ca. You can write to ihabilitation@gmail.com, and you can get me on Skype at ihabilitation. And if you want to look up Tom Dekker on LinkedIn, I'm there too, TomDekker. My parting piece of advice is, well, if you want to do something, start telling people what it is that you want to do, and maybe start by offering them something that will help them, as I've offered you folks the books, and those people will reach out and help you, as you have done by empowering me through the podcast and all the cool stuff you're helping me do right now to get the iHabilitation concept known. So if it can work with this, which I'm sure it will, it can work with anything. So if you've got an idea and you're out there, go for it.
Absolutely, Tom. The Delivering Access Podcast Nation is going to sign off and say goodbye.
Goodbye.
In my traditional closing, if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you are right. Think pennies, get pennies. Think dollars, get dollars. See you on the other side.
This has been a Yuga Music Group production. Website 81x.com/Yuga/X. The Yuga Music Group can be reached at 678 608-8969. All rights reserved.